There she was, my wife, lying in a hospital bed, faking her own death. I charged straight over and slapped her twice across the face. Then I called the organ donation department. If she wanted to give her heart to someone else, I'd make sure of it. In my previous life, I was too consumed by grief. I drank the water her best friend Wang Manyun handed me and slept for 3 days straight. By the time I woke up, Lu Ruyan had already been cremated. Before I could even mourn, the debt collectors were at my door. That's when I found out, my wife had racked up tens of millions in debt before she died. They harvested both my kidneys and forced me to work 24 hours a day to pay it all back. In just 10 years, I aged until I looked like a man in his 80s. And then, 10 years after her death, Lu Ruyan showed up and handed me 100 yuan. A thank you for my sacrifice. I couldn't take it. I died on the spot. But when I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day Lu Ruyan's heart attack had just been announced. There she was, still covered in a white sheet. And I smiled coldly. If you want to die so badly, then I'll help you get there. Lu Ruyan's best friend, Wang Manyun, kept urging me to drink a glass of water. I looked at it. Last time, that drink had knocked me out cold. I was almost certain that water had been drugged. The whole point was to make me miss Lu Ruyan's cremation. I set the glass down and pushed past Wang Manyun to Lu Ruyan's bedside. I pulled back the sheet. Her complexion was rosy. Her breathing, steady and calm. In my last life, I'd been too heartbroken to notice. This time, I saw everything. I raised my hand and delivered a sharp slap across Lu Ruyan's face. She didn't even flinch. She'd clearly been given a sedative, a strong one. She was afraid I'd figure it out. Wang Manyun let out a shriek, convinced I'd discovered the act. Brother-in-law, even if you're angry, you can't hit her like that. I continued to strike Lu Ruyan all over, acting as though I was overcome with grief, while Wang Manyun looked like she was about to explode. I put on my best devastated face and began to wail. I told you not to stay up late. I told you to take your medication. Why didn't you listen? How am I supposed to go on without you? Wang Manyun swallowed hard, frozen on the spot. I didn't have time to deal with her, I was already dialing. Yes, I'd like to arrange an organ donation. She just passed. Please come right away. Wang Manyun tried to stop me, but couldn't risk blowing her cover. She frantically typed out a message instead. The organ donation team arrived within minutes. I put on my most heartbroken expression. My wife was a kind and generous woman. Her death was so sudden. I want her life to live on through others. I hope she can save more people. Your generosity is admirable, sir. On behalf of the families you'll be helping, thank you. Which organs would you like to donate? I'm not sure which ones are still viable. Just open her up and take whatever works. And if there's nothing usable, you can donate her body to a medical university. Let her become a teaching cadaver. No. You can't do that, brother-in-law. Ruyan never wanted to be an organ donor, she told me herself. We have to respect her wishes. Manyun, I'm Ruyan's husband. This decision is mine to make. You and Ruyan may have been close like sisters, but you share no blood. We both know who has the final say here, and every minute you spend arguing is another minute those organs spend deteriorating. You're a doctor, don't you believe in saving lives? The staff from the organ donation office chimed in. Dr. Wang, please, step aside. Wang Manyun refused to budge, frantically darting back and forth. I just contacted her mother. At least let her say goodbye to Ruyan first. Lu Ruyan's mother, Du Xiaoman, came running in, still wearing the perm rods from her beauty appointment. She took one look at her daughter lying peacefully on the bed and exhaled in relief. Then she turned and slapped me across the face. What the hell kind of bad luck did Ruyan bring on herself by marrying you? My daughter is barely gone and you want to cut her open? Anyone who lays a finger on her, I will destroy your entire family. No donation. Not happening. Take your people and go ruin someone else's life. The organ donation team exchanged reluctant looks and quietly left. Wang Manyun finally breathed again. She draped the white sheet back over Lu Ruyan. Du Xiaoman dropped onto the sofa and turned her fury back on me. You money-grubbing piece of trash. Your wife dies and instead of arranging a proper burial, you want to turn her into a medical specimen. You want my daughter sliced into 1,000 pieces? If you want to donate something, go donate yourself. Go die right now. Then I'll donate every last piece of you. I covered my face and let out a long, heavy sigh. Mom. I'm sorry. I just wanted to. I don't care what you wanted. Get out of my sight right now. I'm taking my daughter to the crematorium myself. I immediately stood down, meek and obedient, and quietly handed Du Xiaoman the glass of water Wang Manyun had brought for me. Du Xiaoman was parched from all the shouting. She drank it down in one go. Wang Manyun reached out to stop her, but it was too late. Within 2 minutes, Du Xiaoman slumped over, fast asleep. Wang Manyun broke into a cold sweat all over again. She stammered nervously. "Brother-in-law, you're not thinking about donating her organs too, are you?" I shook my head calmly and laid Du Xiaoman flat on the sofa. "Of course not. Mom already said no. I'm a respectful son-in-law." Wang Manyun exhaled in relief. Auntie fainted so suddenly, something might be seriously wrong. "You should take her to the ER right away. I'll personally handle Rian's cremation." I gave her a long, cold look. "You've got it backwards. You're the doctor, you handle the patient. I'm Rian's husband, I handle the cremation. Don't you think that makes more sense?" And with that, I called the crematorium and told them to come immediately. Wang Manyun was beside herself, pacing like a cat on a hot griddle, desperately trying to wake Du Xiaoman. But the woman was out cold, not so much as twitching. By the time the crematorium staff wheeled Lu Rian away, Wang Manyun finally cracked. She grabbed my sleeve, her voice gone hoarse. "Brother-in-law. I think I saw Rian move. I think she might still be able to be saved." I turned and held the death certificate right in front of her face. "Manyun, think very carefully before you say another word. If Rian is actually alive right now, your hospital bears full responsibility. And you personally? You'd be looking at murder charges. Gross medical negligence. Criminal liability. Whether that hospital stays open, I couldn't say. But you? You're going to prison. So think hard, did you really see Rian move?" Wang Manyun was at a complete loss. She couldn't find a single word to say. I gave a cold laugh, shook off her hand, and followed the crematorium van out the door. Wang Manyun let out a strangled cry and snatched up her phone to make a call. I looked down at Lu Rian on the stretcher and couldn't help but smile. Then I noticed it, her fingers twitched. The sedative was wearing off. She must have realized where she was being taken, because she was starting to come around. "Driver, step on it, would you? I know my mother-in-law is going to fight to reclaim the body, she's been dead set against organ donation. But I just want my wife to go in one piece and leave in one piece." The driver nodded and floored it. In my previous life, I had crossed paths with Lu Rian on the street 10 years later. Her face had barely changed, she still looked as young and vibrant as ever, while I had become a withered old man. Back then, I had rushed toward her, desperate to be recognized, desperate to hear her voice again, to tell her how much I'd missed her through all those miserable years. She squinted at me for a long moment before she finally recognized who I was. Then she smiled and said, "Oh, it's you. 10 years and you already look older than my grandfather." I had been hunched over, raspy-voiced, completely broken at 50, barely recognizable as a human being. I had choked out, "Lu Rian, aren't you dead?" I faked my death to get away from you. She never finished that sentence. But I understood every word she didn't say. If she had simply asked for a divorce, would have agreed without hesitation. But a divorce meant splitting the assets, and it meant carrying the label of a cheating wife for the rest of her life. A faked death, on the other hand, left every debt in my name while she quietly transferred all the assets to herself. She could walk away clean, a new identity, a new life, free to be with Ji Boda in broad daylight. I had been too furious to speak. But Lu Rian seemed to be enjoying herself. She smiled and said, "You know, back in the hospital, I could actually hear everything you said. The way you cried. I still haven't forgotten the sound. I'm genuinely curious, how does a grown man manage to cry like a goose?" Honestly, it was hilarious. I had clutched my chest and collapsed. Ji Boda glanced over with mild annoyance. "Babe, you think he's trying to pull a scam? Let's just go." Lu Rian laughed it off and drove away without a second glance. My last memory of that life was watching the taillights disappear into the dark before everything went black. Now, looking down at Lu Rian's young and flawless face, I pressed my ear to her chest and listened to the slow, steady rhythm of her heartbeat. "I said everything I never got to say last time. I know you're not dead. You've been cheating on me for years. You planned this whole performance just so you could run off with Ji Boda and leave me holding the bag. But I don't hate you for it. I've decided to respect your wishes. Since you want to die, I'll make sure you get there quickly. I know you can hear every word I'm saying right now. What I'm not sure of is whether you can feel anything. I hope you can. That way, you'll get to experience the cremation firsthand. You might just be the first person in history to be cremated alive." Lu Rian's fingers trembled. She couldn't move, but tears had begun streaming silently down her face. I reached over and wiped them away. "Don't cry yet, save it for when you're inside the furnace. You'll have plenty of time." My phone kept ringing, Wang Manyun and Du Xiaomin, calling back to back. But I was just a grief-stricken widower. Ignoring calls at a time like this was perfectly understandable. The driver pushed the van to its limits. A trip that normally took 30 minutes was done in 20. But the crematorium was packed. The earliest slot for Lu Ruyan was at least an hour out. I found the supervisor, shifted my expression into pure devastation, and cried on command. My wife died of a sudden cardiac arrest. When my mother-in-law heard the news, she collapsed too. She's in emergency care right now. I have to get back to her. Please, let my wife go first. Please. I can't lose both of them in the same day. The supervisor had never once seen someone try to cut the queue at a crematorium. I understand you're hurting. But everyone else has been waiting too. I can't just let you skip the line. He said it with words. But his extended hand said something else entirely. I understood immediately. I pulled out my phone and transferred him 2,000 yuan on the spot. Please, big brother, help me out. I'm an orphan. My wife and my mother-in-law are the only family I've ever had. I can't lose her too. The supervisor was moved by my sincerity. Lu Ruyan was bumped to the front of the line. In under 10 minutes, she was being wheeled into the furnace. The technician reached for the ignition button. I stopped him. I couldn't let an innocent worker carry the weight of this. Besides, I wanted to do it myself. After some firm insisting, the technician stepped aside and let me take the controls. But just as I reached for the button, the doors burst open, and in stormed Du Xiaomin and Wang Manyun, screaming at the top of their lungs. Stop, stop, do not cremate her. You stop right now, bring my daughter out. Brother-in-law, wait, auntie still has things to say to Ruyan. Get out of my way. I forbid you from cremating my daughter. I'll do it myself. Even at this point, this critical, final moment, the two of them were still trying to salvage the fake death plan. I dropped to my knees, my voice breaking with sorrow. Mom. Ruyan is already gone. Please. Let her rest in peace. I'm her husband. I'm not going anywhere. The three-way standoff drew a crowd. The crematorium staff looked at each other, baffled. What is this, some kind of soap opera? This is a crematorium, not a stage. One of them reached for the ignition button anyway. Wang Manyun and Du Xiaomin lunged forward with reckless, wild-eyed desperation, like two tigers throwing themselves at a boulder. The startled technician stumbled sideways. Wang Manyun and Du Xiaomin couldn't stop their momentum. They slammed directly into the control panel. With a thunderous roar, the furnace ignited, and the flames swallowed Lu Ruyan whole. Two screams tore through the room. Everyone turned to stare at Wang Manyun and Du Xiaomin. But I had eyes only for the furnace, because the sedative had clearly worn off. Lu Ruyan was fully awake. I could just barely make out her silhouette, arm outstretched, mouth open wide. But with all the chaos erupting around us, no one else was paying attention. A minute or so passed. When people finally looked back at the furnace, the crematorium staff started whispering to each other in bewilderment. That's the first time I've ever seen an arm stretched that high. Looked just like a living person. Good thing it's daytime. If this happened at midnight, I'd have sworn it was a zombie. I dabbed at eyes that had no tears to shed and fought to keep the corners of my mouth from curling upward. Then I put on the most pitiful expression I could manage. She always adored her mother. She must have heard Auntie's voice, and tried to sit up one last time to see her. I turned to face the furnace and pressed a hand to my heart. My love, go in peace. I will take care of your mother for you. I'll work hard to make sure the two of you are reunited soon. Wang Manyun abandoned Du Xiaomin on the floor and stumbled toward the furnace. One look at what was inside and she nearly fainted dead away. She hammered frantically at the controls. Why won't it stop? Someone put out the fire. The crematorium staff had never encountered a family member this unhinged. They gently but firmly pulled Wang Manyun away. Ma'am, we understand you're grieving. But what's done is done. She needs you to let her go in peace. Wang Manyun had gone completely white. She crumpled to the floor. It's over. Everything is over. Du Xiaomin crawled on all fours to my feet, clinging to my trouser leg and screaming curses. You murderer. You killed my daughter. Give her back to me. I exhaled slowly and produced the death certificate. Mom. I know you're devastated. But Ruyan's death had nothing to do with me. She died of sudden cardiac arrest. Mom, I know you're in pain. But Ryan's death had nothing to do with me. The cause was sudden cardiac arrest. Don't believe me? Ask Manyun, she was the one who treated Ryan. She's the one who signed this death certificate and handed it to me personally. I turned and looked at Wang Manyun, barely hiding my smirk. Isn't that right, Manyun? Wang Manyun had no idea what to say. If she admitted Ryan was alive, how did the death certificate happen? If she said Ryan was dead, Du Xiaoman would never accept it. Either way, she was trapped. But the words landed. Du Xiaoman's expression flickered. It was you. You're the one who killed my daughter. Why else would you sign a death certificate? And now she's been cremated. This is all your fault. Those words hit like a grenade. Everyone in the room froze. The crematorium staff went pale. Oh my God, is this a murder scene? Du Xiaoman's eyes rolled back and she fainted dead away. I reacted instantly, and brought my palm straight across Wang Manyun's face. Manyun, what is wrong with you? How could you joke about something like this? My wife is dead. Why are you spreading rumors? Wang Manyun was too stunned to respond. The staff, having heard my rebuttal, concluded it had been some kind of wild outburst and quietly returned to their duties. With the cremation complete, I put on an expression of pure outrage, tucked Lu Rian's ashes under my arm, and walked out of the crematorium. On my way out, I left Wang Manyun with one final instruction. You're the one who scared Mom into fainting for no reason. You take her to the hospital. It wasn't that I didn't want to stay and watch the spectacle. I simply had more important things to attend to. In my last life, I had been too consumed by grief. By the time I came to my senses, the company was already gone. This time, if I didn't move fast, once Du Xiaoman woke up, she'd get there first. Attorney Chen, Rian's passing was sudden, but she mentioned certain family trusts and offshore accounts before she died. I need you to pull every connection you have and get me a complete picture of her actual financial holdings within 48 hours. Attorney Chen hesitated on the other end of the line. Mr. Lin, based on publicly available records, Ms. Lu's declared assets are just a few properties and a consulting firm that's barely staying afloat. And then there's the tens of millions in debt, correct? Attorney Chen, Lu Rian was cutting down to her bones. She chose to fake her death rather than file for divorce. That tells you everything. Whatever she was protecting is worth far more than that debt. Find it. I'll triple your commission. A heavy reward draws brave men. By the following afternoon, I had received an encrypted email from Attorney Chen. It was exactly as I suspected. Lu Rian had been using her so-called medical consulting firm to run a long-term money laundering and asset transfer operation. Using Wang Manyun's medical credentials as cover, she had acquired a substantial portfolio of black-market pharmaceutical formulas, all hidden under the names of several offshore shell companies. Even more ironic, I found a secret safe. The address was a rundown garage I had never once set foot in during my last life. When I rolled up the rusted shutter door, a wave of mold hit me in the face. And there, in a hidden compartment I pried open, was everything she'd been hiding. No jewelry. No trinkets. Just neat stacks of cash and several cryptocurrency cold storage wallets. Tens of millions in debt, and here you were, Lu Rian, planning to let me rot in hell while you and Ji Boda rode off into the sunset on a fortune in Bitcoin. I counted the cash. Just what was in this room alone came to over 2 million yuan. I didn't rush it to the bank. Instead, I reached out to the lending companies Lu Rian owed the most to. When dealing with loan sharks, the last thing you want to do is hide. The smart move is to buy them. I invited the heads of several firms to a private room at an upscale club. Gentlemen, Lu Rian has been cremated. The death certificate is right here. I'm sure you've all heard by now. Mr. Lin, debt doesn't die with the debtor. You're the first in line to inherit. That means you're the one who owes us. I'm not saying I won't pay. This is 2 million yuan. Consider it a good faith payment, covering a portion of the interest. As for the remainder, once I've taken over Lu Rian's company, I'll repay you through legitimate equity pledges. But there's one condition. Lu Rian's mother, Du Xiaoman, and a man named Ji Boda, they may have their hands on some of Rian's hidden funds. Right now, they're spreading rumors that I murdered her, trying to contest the estate. If they succeed, this debt disappears, and so does every last yuan you're owed. If they pull this off, none of you will see a single cent. So what exactly is Mr. Lin suggesting? Don't let them interfere with my repayment plan. And while you're at it, give them a taste of what it feels like to be on the receiving end of a debt collection. Since they want evidence so badly, let them drown in debt first. Let the pressure do the talking. Lu Rian's company was called Rian Trading, elegant name, Rotten Core. A hollow shell built to launder money. On my first day taking over, I walked in with 12 broad-shouldered security personnel. The CFO, Wang Qin, Wang Manyun's cousin, stood there clutching a stack of files, her face drained of color. "Mr. Lin, isn't this a bit much? Director Liu just passed, and you're already dismissing the entire staff? You've been loyal employees. Doesn't that count for anything? Loyalty? Embezzling 380,000 yuan through falsified invoices. Wang Qin, do you want to negotiate with me about loyalty, or would you prefer to negotiate with the Financial Crimes Investigation Unit about your future? You have 30 minutes. Pull every email and financial transaction between Liu Ruyan and Ji Boda off that computer, all of it. Do it right, and I'll consider the 380 written off. Fail to deliver, and you can keep your cousin company behind bars." In under 20 minutes, I had everything I needed, including evidence of Liu Ruyan's illegal asset transfers to Ji Boda, and electronic purchase contracts for properties they had bought together overseas. These were the chips Liu Ruyan had been stockpiling to start a brand new life after her faked death. Now they were mine. All of it. And they would become the foundation of my fraud and asset transfer lawsuit against both of them. The sky outside was heavy and gray. I watched the numbers in my bank account tick upward, and felt nothing but calm. Liu Ruyan's fixed assets, the digital assets in her cold wallets, and the equity value of the company after restructuring, combined, the total exceeded 50 million yuan. As for the tens of millions in debt, through careful legal maneuvering, I had reclassified it all as Liu Ruyan's personal fraudulent liability. With the debtor deceased and assets liquidated as repayment, the remaining balance was transferred entirely to Du Xiaoman, who had served as guarantor. That was my final gift to her. Thank you, darling. Thanks to you, I now have money, property, and a company. From here on, I intend to live the life you never let me have, only better. I drank until I blacked out and passed out on the sofa. The next morning, a knock at the door dragged me back from a pounding hangover. I rubbed my temples and pulled it open. Standing outside were Wang Manyun and Du Xiaoman. And beside them, a man who looked a few years older than me. That had to be Ji Boda. The man I had crossed paths with briefly in my last life. His face was twisted with righteous fury. He had a boy with him, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with facial features uncannily similar to Liu Ruyan's. Was this Liu Ruyan's illegitimate son? No wonder she had refused to have children during our marriage. She'd already had one with him. All three of them had heavy dark circles and grief-stricken faces. And behind them, several police officers. Officers, that's the man. He cremated my daughter while she was still alive. Arrest him, then cremate him too, so he knows what it feels like. I had already predicted this confrontation. I just hadn't expected it to come this fast. I put on a look of exasperated disbelief. "Mom, can you please not make jokes like this?" I produced the death certificate and handed it to the officers. "Officers, this is my wife's official death certificate. My mother-in-law is taking her loss very hard. I'm afraid her grief may be affecting her mental state." This all looks legitimate. I sighed and continued. "My wife and I were married for 3 years. We were deeply in love. When she passed, I couldn't bear the thought of her body deteriorating, so I arranged the cremation immediately. Was that wrong of me?" Du Xiaoman looked like she was about to explode. I pressed a hand to my heart. "You're lying. My daughter was sick and tired of you, you useless man. If Ji Boda had been able to get a divorce back then, Ruyan would never have made the mistake of marrying you out of spite. You did this on purpose. You rushed her cremation just to get your hands on her estate and her company. I confirmed it with the company yesterday. You've already taken everything. What do you have to say for yourself?" I let my face crumble into a look of shattered disbelief, eyes red and glistening. "Mom. You can call me every name in the book. But what Ruyan and I had was real. If our love meant nothing, then why did she name me as the sole beneficiary of her entire estate? You claim Ruyan is still alive. But do you really think a hospital the size of that one can't tell the difference between a living person and a dead one? Manyun told me herself, Ruyan was brain dead. Her heart had stopped. What living person presents like that? Du Xiaoman turned to Wang Manyun, demanding backup. But Wang Manyun just stared at the floor. Understandable. If she admitted now that the death certificate was falsified, the charges against her would be catastrophic. Better to stay quiet and let it ride. The standoff had hit a dead end. Ji Boda tugged Du Xiaoman's sleeve quietly, and she held her tongue. He stepped forward and cleared his throat. Ruyan didn't die. I'm Ruyan's boyfriend. Years ago, Ruyan and I split up due to a misunderstanding. She married you out of spite. This year, I finalized my divorce and came back for her, with our son. She realized she still loved me. She planned to fake her death and leave you behind. But no one could have predicted that you'd actually send her to be cremated. Please don't blame Ryan for what she did. She only chose this path because she didn't want to hurt you. She was a kind person. Now that Ryan is gone, all we're asking is for you to accept this child, and give him the inheritance that rightfully belongs to him. I took a slow sip of water, then mimicked Du Xiaomin's tone perfectly. You're full of it, Mom. I know, you and Ryan had your own kind of relationship. Ryan's will didn't leave you a single cent. So now you've shown up with some random kid trying to slander her name and claim her estate. Am I right? Du Xiaomin nearly choked with rage, but the money kept her in check. You're lying. Ryan and I had a wonderful relationship. This is Ryan's son. I know it with absolute certainty. I produced Lu Ryan's will and held it up. Then why, Mom, is your name nowhere in it? If your relationship with Ryan was so wonderful, why was every last asset left entirely to me? Every single thing. Why? Du Xiaomin fell silent. Ji Boda hesitated as well. She could hardly admit the truth, that Lu Ryan had only written that will to saddle me with debt. I glanced at the child standing behind Ji Boda. A cold smile settled on my face. No wonder she played the devoted wife for 3 years, and then suddenly couldn't keep up the act. Her first love came back. With a son in tow. But I'm not heartbroken. I've already died once before. Water under the bridge. I kept my voice steady. If you're claiming this child is Ryan's, then produce your evidence. A court-certified paternity test. Or a birth certificate. Ji Boda and Du Xiaomin exchanged a look. There was no paternity test. The child was born at home, so there's no birth certificate either. But he is Ryan's son. Officers, surely you can see what's happening here. These people knew my wife had been cremated. They brought a child to my door to claim her inheritance, and threatened me with murder charges as leverage. Everything they've said contradicts itself. Du Xiaomin spoke up weakly. I can do a DNA test with the child. If I'm proven to be his grandmother, doesn't that effectively prove he's Ryan's son? The officer shook his head. That's not how it works. A match only proves you and the child share a biological relationship. It does not confirm the child's mother is specifically Lu Ryan. And even if it did, it wouldn't rule out the possibility that you have other children. I barely managed to keep a straight face. Truth be told, a significant part of why I'd insisted on cremating Lu Ryan was precisely to prevent a move like this. And it had paid off. Du Xiaomin and Ji Boda traded a look. Ji Boda shook his head and changed tactics. Regardless of who the child belongs to, Ryan did not die. This man cremated her. He's a murderer. And a murderer cannot inherit the estate. That part was technically true. But the catch was, you'd have to prove I was a murderer first. I turned and looked directly at Wang Manyun. Manyun, you tell us. Is Ryan alive, or is she dead? You're a doctor. You have a family. Think very carefully before you answer. You may not remember this, but I certainly do. At the crematorium, it was you and Mom who rushed the control panel and triggered the ignition. If Ryan was truly alive, then the two of you are the murderers. I reframed their panicked lunge as a deliberate act of pressing the button. Du Xiaomin barely got out a word before Wang Manyun gritted her teeth and said quietly, Ryan is dead. She really is dead. I exhaled. But Ji Boda raised his phone. I knew you'd lie. So I brought evidence. Ji Boda hit play. The video showed all 4 of them, Ji Boda, Lu Ryan, Wang Manyun, and Du Xiaomin, sitting in a living room, plotting the entire fake death scheme. Lu Ryan's voice came through the speaker, exactly as maddening as I remembered from my last life. I'll use a sedative. You find a way to knock out my husband. Then tell him I've already been cremated. Pull this off, and I'll give you 1,000,000 yuan. The recording, however, was incomplete. It didn't include any discussion of saddling me with the debt. Wang Manyun crouched down, utterly speechless. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Ji Boda seemed to think he'd won. He pressed forward. I'm not lying to you. You're the one who killed Ryan. You should be behind bars, and this estate should go to her mother. I let my expression go blank for a moment, then gradually shifted into one of deep, bewildered sorrow. I let the silence breathe, then spoke. Officers, I'd like to file a report. These 3 deliberately deceived me into believing my wife was dead. I was in agony. I wasn't thinking straight. How could I have noticed she was still alive? They knew I wanted to donate her organs. They knew I was going to have her cremated. And they said nothing. Not a single word. They let this happen on purpose. They engineered the entire situation, so they could show up afterward and claim her estate. I was simply following proper procedures to give my wife a dignified farewell. Am I now the one at fault? Clearly not. Both of them had badly miscalculated. They had assumed I would shatter, that the shock would leave me floundering and easy to manipulate. But I had already died once. I was no longer the naive, soft-hearted fool I'd been in my previous life. The moment I woke up in this second chance, I had mapped out every single move. My voice cracked with grief. When I wanted to donate her organs, Mom, you were there. When you stopped me, why didn't you tell me the truth then? If it was just a divorce she wanted, did you think I'd refuse? The truth is, you people manipulated Ryan. You fed her whatever lies it took to convince her that faking her death was the only way out. You turned me into the man who sent his own wife to the crematorium. How could you be so cruel? It was because Ryan specifically said she needed you to believe it, so I had no choice but to stop you from donating her organs. I couldn't say a word. Then explain this. On the way to the crematorium, you called me repeatedly. That proves you knew where I was going. I was too grief-stricken to answer. But why didn't you send a single text? And when you arrived at the crematorium, Ryan hadn't been cremated yet. Why didn't you speak up then? Why, instead of telling the truth, did all of you charge forward and slam into the ignition button in front of everyone? In full view of every person in that room, you pressed the button yourselves. Du Xiaoman and Wang Manyun were completely silenced. But I knew the truth, they had been confident they would get there in time. All they needed was a moment to pull me away from the furnace, and the plan would have been salvaged. High risk, high reward. That was the gamble they made. The whole messy standoff ended without resolution. Both sides had their own version of events. Eventually, the police had no choice but to take all of us in for questioning. After several days of investigation, however, it became clear, I was genuinely just a devoted, oblivious husband who had no idea his wife was cheating. I had never once questioned her business trips or social outings. I had never checked her phone. Interviews with neighbors, friends, and co-workers all painted the same picture. Security footage from our home confirmed it. We had been the picture-perfect couple, not a single argument on record. And of course, the police had no way of knowing about my rebirth. Based on everything in front of them, what possible reason would a husband like me have to kill his own wife? Meanwhile, the stories from Du Xiaoman, Wang Manyun, and Ji Boda were riddled with contradictions. They'd had countless opportunities to tell me Lu Ruyan was alive, and chose to say nothing every single time. They only spoke up after she had already been cremated. Wang Manyun and Du Xiaoman had watched Lu Ruyan enter the furnace and still refused to come clean. And they had been the ones who threw themselves at the ignition controls. They claimed it was accidental. But who in the world was going to believe that? On top of everything, the faked death scheme itself was damning enough from the start. The investigation's conclusion was clear: I was an innocent, grieving husband. The other three were detained on suspicion of homicide. After they were released on bail, Du Xiaoman and Ji Boda refused to let it go. They hired people to harass me, day after day. First I went to building management. Then to the police. But they stuck to me like a rash that wouldn't clear. Eventually I had no choice. I used Lu Ruyan's estate to hire 100 bodyguards, and gave them a standing order. Anyone else who comes here to start trouble, except for those two familiar faces, escort them out the hard way. If anything breaks, I'll cover the damages. After a few rounds of that, Du Xiaoman and Ji Boda stayed put. But the people they'd recruited to do their dirty work weren't so lucky. They kept the local hospital's emergency ward well-staffed for a solid month. Eventually, no matter how much Du Xiaoman and Ji Boda agitated, no one was willing to be their errand boy anymore. The two of them raged uselessly, reduced to trying to kill me with stares alone. I was happy to oblige them with a show. I lived well, right in front of their faces: champagne, sports cars, beautiful company. Everything I'd been denied in my last life, I indulged in without reservation. It drove Du Xiaoman and Ji Boda absolutely mad. 3 months later, the verdict came down. All three were convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. When the officers arrived with the arrest warrant, Du Xiaoman put on one final performance, a spectacular attempt at a rooftop suicide on the apartment balcony. She screamed that I was a beast who had murdered his own wife, that I would burn in hell, that the police were corrupt and incompetent, and that justice was dead. A crowd gathered below. Du Xiaoman spotted the audience and seemed to think this was her moment, an opportunity to rouse public sympathy and turn the crowd to her side. She went on for a full hour, sobbing, emoting, delivering the performance of her life. Until someone in the crowd called out, exasperated, "Are you jumping or not? Quit wasting everyone's time." In a burst of indignant fury, Du Xiaomin leaped to her feet, and slipped. She tumbled off the edge with a yelp, and that was the end of her. As for Wang Manyun, things weren't much better. Once everything unraveled, her husband divorced her on the spot. He took the children and cut them off entirely, instructing them never to recognize her as their mother again. Before the police came for her, Wang Manyun showed up at my door more than once, begging me to write a letter of forgiveness. She said she'd do anything, that she didn't want to lose everything, that she couldn't bear to end up with nothing left. But the last time I had lost everything, who had shown me even a shred of pity? You make your bed. You lie in it. The last time she came, she stripped herself bare in front of me. I laughed coldly and had the 100 bodyguards throw her out. Word later reached me that Wang Manyun had attempted suicide several times inside the prison. None of them succeeded. As for Ji Boda, that was almost funny. He actually tried to play the family card. He said the child was innocent. He said that if I truly loved Lu Ruyan, how could I let her child suffer and become an orphan? He even pointed out that the boy was smart for his age and could help me run the company someday. As for himself, he said he wasn't greedy. As the child's biological father, all he asked was a few million to retire on quietly. He promised he'd never show his face again. I smiled and told him I'd already contacted an orphanage, the boy would be well taken care of. As for you, Ruyan is lonely down there. You'd better go keep her company. As Ji Boda erupted into a string of furious curses, I walked out of the police station with a smile, leaving every last piece of the past behind. Once everything was settled, I dismissed all 100 bodyguards and gave each of them a generous severance package. Among them, there was one female bodyguard who had not only been exceptional at her job, but genuinely matched my temperament. Beautiful, to boot, and more importantly, I'd seen something in her eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. Loyalty. Real loyalty, twice over. So I sold the old apartment, the one that held nothing but bad memories, and used the estate Lu Ruyan had so thoughtfully left me to buy something bigger, in a better location. The two of us moved in together. As for Lu Ruyan's ashes, I kept them with me. Because I believed in divine justice. I wanted her spirit to look down from wherever she was and see exactly how well I was living. Boss Lin, what's next? The bodyguard, athletic, sharp-eyed, and surprisingly bashful in this moment, stood behind me, fidgeting slightly with her hands. I smiled. Well, we follow the national policy, of course. 3 children, minimum.